Trevor Sikkema, the co-host of NFL Stock Exchange, to give his take on who the Raiders might select. And Trevor, you know what? We've spoken. First of all, thanks for coming on. We're glad to have you. Good to meet you.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate you having me on as well.
Well, everybody thinks that Mendoza's going number one. Okay, we all know that's out there. I want to ask you this. You're the first person I've asked this on the show. We do have to address there is another scenario that is possible. Do you see a world where Mendoza is not taken first overall by the Raiders, rather they trade out of the pick for a haul, let somebody else take him?
I just don't think that's going to happen this year. And the reason why is because I'm not sure that the price is going to match sort of what you'd be giving up here. I mean, Mendoza, I don't think that he's just going number one overall because he happens to be a quarterback in this class and the Raiders need one. He's a good prospect. I would take Fernando Mendoza over Cam Ward last year. So if that sort of puts it into perspective, I think that he is a really good quarterback prospect. And normally when you talk about trading out of that number one spot, you know, in the past, it's been, okay, multiple first round picks, multiple second round picks, right? A king's ransom, if you will. I'm just not so sure that the Raiders are going to get that type of a haul. So for where they are, how they set themselves up with not only the new coaching staff, but all the additions in free agency as well, it all sets up and is centered around them taking a quarterback right now. So I think the entire offseason has really been built around this move, and I just can't see a reality where they're not taking Mendoza at number one.
Yeah, I mean, people forget also, you still need a quarterback. Even if you took a king's ransom, you still can't win without a quarterback. You can push it to next year's draft. Going to be a heavy quarterback draft, yet you don't know where you're going to pick. So I agree. I would go and stick with number one and pick at number one, but it's not my choice. There's another quarterback also that has been out there, and that's Alabama's Ty Simpson. Most regard him as the second best quarterback in this draft. There have been some conflicting reports, though, about kind of the gap in talent and experience and all that between him and Mendoza. What are your thoughts on that? Is it a closer gap or a wider gap than we think?
No, look, I like Ty Simpson. I gave him sort of right around a second to late second round grade. And anytime you talk about a quarterback, you know, you're paying a little bit of a tax to draft that position. So you figure, all right, mid-second to late second round grade, that probably accounts to more of a late first round selection, maybe a mid-first round selection, depending on the team that they're choosing. But even though I like Ty Simpson, I think Ty Simpson can win games in the NFL. I think he could be a decent starter for you, especially if you surround him with a good team. It's not really close to me. I don't think that it's close enough to where I'd be having a debate between who I would take number one overall. Mendoza is the one who, when you look at what he's able to do, the arm talent that he has, the physical ability, I mean, because Ty Simpson, he's a little bit smaller for quarterback compared to NFL standards. Fernando Mendoza is not like that. Fernando's also got a little bit of that added mobility and that toughness to him, like we saw in the national championship game when he looks to tuck it and run. I think he's got the arm strength to be able to attack all three levels of the field and really make any throw that you want him to make. Simpson, I think, really processes the game very well, but he is a little bit smaller of a quarterback. And where I think he's got a good arm, I don't think that it's anything that's way above and beyond what Mendoza's would be. So I think overall arm talent, you lean toward Mendoza. The overall stature, you lean toward Mendoza, and then just the body of work throughout their college careers, you have to go with Mendoza as well. So with no category specifically going to Ty Simpson, it wouldn't really be much of a debate with who I would take first if I had a quarterback selection.
Let's move over to the defensive side. No doubt the Raiders needed to improve on defense from last year, and they really did that through free agency. We do know that this draft is deep in edge rushers. The Raiders already signed Kwity Paye. They brought Malcolm Kuntz back on another deal. Max Crosby's back in town. Do you still think that might be an area of focus for the Raiders, considering Rob Leonard's scheme? They're going to rush every quarterback. I mean, they're going to put a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks this year.
No, absolutely. I think that every coach wants waves of pass rushers, right? It's not just about looking at the front of the depth chart and saying, okay, we're good at our two starting spots. I mean, these are guys who are going all out every single play, whether it's rundowns or pass downs. So you've got to have that rotation of edge rushers. And so I look at, obviously not number one overall, but, you know, you talk about, you know, the second and third round selections, guys like, you know, does TJ Parker from Clemson make it to you? Gabe Akis, who is a little bit bigger, a little bit more powerful type of an outside linebacker. Maybe you want a little bit more speed. So Malachi Lawrence from UCF, or R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma, Kieran Crawford from Auburn. There's so many different names that you could throw out there in the second and third round range, to where I think it's a pretty nice sweet spot for them. I'd throw defensive tackle in there as well. This is a team that not only wants to focus on the edge rushers, but the interior defensive line as well. When I do my mock drafts, of course, Mendoza goes number 1 overall for the Raiders. But when I get to that second round, I always find myself saying, man, the defensive tackles, I like the value here. Caden McDonald from Ohio State. You're looking at Christian Miller as well from Georgia. Like, these are these run-stuffing players who can really help fortify the early downs, and something that I think was a struggle for them the previous season. So that's an area where I like that. And if they want to double dip on defensive line, I think you could then, the third or their multiple fourth-round picks they have, you could pick up an edge rusher that, yeah, okay, the later you get in the draft, they're a little bit more specialized in exactly what they do, less all-around game. But I think this is definitely a draft where day 2 and early day 3 as well, the Raiders will have a chance to continue to fortify that defensive line.
I think that's a great point. I think people underestimate depth at defensive line and the ability to wear out offenses early and be able to rotate. So that's a great point, that you can only get deeper there. One position group that seems to be deepest is cornerback. No doubt the Raiders need depth at cornerback. They re-signed Eric Stokes in the offseason. Where do you think that they could add some depth or pull the trigger on a corner?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. I like round 2, round 3 for them, because there's a bevy of different corners that you can choose from. And I think the thing with cornerbacks that you got to remember is, the good ones, the all-around ones, the ones who you go, hey, doesn't matter, man coverage, press coverage, zone coverage, bail technique, whatever. The good ones, they go in the top 15. Like, if you have the ability to check all those boxes, you're probably going to be a top 15 draft pick. When you get a little bit later, it's a little bit more specialized. You have to say, okay, well, are we a team that's going to play a lot of cover 3? Are we going to play a lot of press man? Are we going to play a lot of off-zone coverage? What does that look like? And I think there, you've got to identify the different strengths and weaknesses of different corners. So, if they want to be a team that's playing a lot more zone coverage, Chris Johnson from San Diego State is somebody that I like in that role. If they want to play a little bit more man coverage stuff, Colton Hood from Tennessee is somebody that could fit there. You get a little bit later in the draft, and you get guys like Davison Igminosin from Ohio State, Ephesians Prysock from Washington, Dalen Everett from Georgia as well. These players who have those long frames to be able to really get up in wide receivers, get their hands on them early, and play press coverage very confidently. Then, of course, you've got guys who are better in man, or better in zone, when you get to those later rounds. I think that Keith Abney II from Arizona State's a great option there. Hezekiah Massis from Cal. These are guys who, man, when you give them space and you allow them to read the quarterback's eyes, they're fantastic. They really know how to cut those routes, create those turnovers, and passes defended. So to me, corner feels like it's one of those areas where you could go with the second round, but I kind of look at this as the value might be there third and fourth round for them to make those depth additions.
Okay, in addition to corner, no doubt that the Raiders need offensive line, wide receiver, a lot of different ways that they could go there in round 2 or round 3. Give me some other names, some other directions that you think when you're doing your mock drafts. You said you've landed on a couple tackles, but where do you think they could go there at number 36 especially?
Yeah, I think that I like those defensive tackle names that I mentioned in Caden McDonald and Christian Miller. Those guys are feel-good type of players. You add them in, and I feel like you've got a good sense of confidence that they're going to be able to really help out the free agent additions and the rest of that team along the way. I like some of the corners that I mentioned, Colton Hood, Chris Johnson, those are some options there. But if you go to some other positions, safety, for example, if Emmanuel McNeil-Warren is there for you, I don't know if he will be. I think that might be a little bit of a stretch, but if he's there at the safety position, you feel pretty good about that. AJ Halsey, the safety from LSU, much more likely that he's there at the beginning of the second round. And this is a player who I think that's where his range starts, especially if you want to give him the freedom to patrol that middle of the field. His nickname's Mr. Give Me That because of all the interceptions that he got over the middle of the field, baiting those quarterbacks' eyes. And so you have somebody who really can give you some turnovers there. And then I mentioned a couple of the edge rushers as well. Really just depends on, hey, where do we feel like we can build the best draft strategy? We're going to have to get the quarterback at the top, and then, wide receiver, safety, edge rusher, defensive line. Where can we see, all right, where's the value here? Where are these guys going to come off the board? Are there specific traits that we're really trying to hone in on? That's, I think, the question that John Spytek's going to answer. But there's a lot of different names and a lot of different ways they can do this in a successful manner.
One of the greatest Raiders of all time, Max Crosby, was a 4th-round pick, right? And the Raiders have 3 picks in the 4th round. That's a real opportunity to build some depth. Maybe you find some gems like a Max Crosby. What position group do you think starts to kind of flesh out where you're not getting the true day one starters, but you really are getting some quality and some value in the 4th round?
I think the corner and edge rusher for this team feels like those positions. I think you're going to hit at least one of them with those multiple 4th-round picks that they have. Again, like I said at the top, once you get into day 3, it's a lot more specialized players, right? It's not guys who you go, okay, this is a 3-down player. If they were a 3-down player, they probably weren't getting picked in the 4th round. All due respect to Max Crosby, who very clearly outplayed that 4th-round selection. But you get to some of those specific pass rushers, a Mason Rieger from Wisconsin, a Max Llewellyn from Iowa, right? These guys who, all right, they're a little bit slender. They're not going to be the best against the run for you, but they've got a deep pass rush bag and they know how to get after the quarterback. If you want to fortify the offensive line, I think the offensive line, you're going to have some options there as well. Billy Strout, the offensive guard from Notre Dame. I look at Trey Zune, the offensive tackle at Texas A&M, who I think could play center and guard at the NFL level. You start thinking about those players. And then wide receiver, Malachi Lawrence, Ted Hurst, guys like that who could be available for you in the 3rd and even 4th round. You start maybe thinking about wide receiver additions as well. I know it's not the most pressing need on this team, but with multiple 4th-round picks, those are some names that you can kind of think about in that regard. If you go back to the defensive line, I think a guy like Tim Keenan, hey, if you want a nose tackle type, somebody who's just going to clog things up for you in the middle, Tim Keenan from Alabama, he's streamlined in that he's probably not going to give you much as a pass rusher, but he'll be a rock for you in the middle of your defense. And so if you want to play more odd front stuff, have that 0-and-1 technique nose tackle, he's somebody who you can keep your eye on as well.
Well, I appreciate you breaking it down for us. I feel like I have 10 million more questions that I want to ask you, Trevor, but I know you got to get back to your draft coverage. We thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you on NFL Stock Exchange. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. Anytime.